Let's start with Jeanette. Do you want to just briefly introduce yourself?
I'm Jeanette. I'm actually one of the writing partners of Michael J.
Mhm.
Vito here.
Mhm.
And we met each other about 12 years ago. And we've just very briefly, we've been writing together ever since. We've worked in multiple types of shows, mostly for animation, and are shifting into the more vertical space.
Okay. Sarah, do you want to?
I'm Sarah Eisenberg, and my writing partner is Becky Wangberg. We met at college, I don't even know how long ago, and started writing a while ago as well. And we've also been in the animation world, but we've also written thriller on 2E, and now getting in the vertical space.
Sorry,
Can
I
you
couldn't
see
see
me?
you, Becky.
Oh,
You,
that's
whatever
okay.
do you want to briefly have any, or is there no notes?
That, yeah, no notes. Sarah delivered it perfectly.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you guys so much. So let's start with sort of how the four of you kind of got involved in verticals.
Well, our story is a little nuts. I mean, we've been trying to break in for a while now. We have some friends who are in charge of the verticals over at Fox, and we've applied to different positions at Drama Box, etc. But we hadn't quite broken in yet. And then very recently, Sarah can take it from here. We got a very random call and basically got a job just kind of landed in our laps.
Yeah, a producer wanted us to was looking for pitches for a very specific vertical, which makes it hard. And we just signed an NDA last week, so this is going to be fun to try to not break it, but also, find fun ways for you guys to know what we're up to. But yeah, so they called us and then we pitched to the company our takes and they were aligned with what they wanted, but they had kind of a loose idea. And then we kind of ran with it. And they liked us and they picked us, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, we
Amazing.
basically got hired by a band to
Yeah.
make that, and they are self-funding. So we're not going through the traditional vertical apps.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And
Mhm.
Jeanette and Michael, what's been your experience as far as breaking in?
Kind of similar. We did have a company reach out to us randomly, and we did like four pilots for potential verticals, just 1 to 1.5 minute episodes, four different ones. And then the bigger thing that we were able to land took about like 6 months of greasing wheels and hustling. So Jeanette and I knew about 6, 7 months ago the industry was kind of headed this way, and a lot of people bulk at verticals. And it was kind of similar to when we first started in animation. We were writing in preschool. A lot of writers we knew were like, "You write for kids?" But for every like one 6 to 11 or tween or adult animated show, there's like 40 preschool shows. So
Mhm.
we kind of survived because we were able to write in an age group where there's so much work. And now with the live action, animation, even narrative podcast industries kind of shrinking, we saw that verticals were on the rise. So we did research. We went online. We went on LinkedIn, and we found a founder of a company, and we were squeaky wheel, slightly cyber stalking, and and messaged them and just told them like based on what you guys are going after, they want to do elevated verticals. So not so much drama box and real shorts, but a little bit above and beyond that for European or Western audiences. And so we set up a meeting. And in the meeting, the general, we asked them specifically straight out, what are you looking for? And they told us. So Jeanette and I went back, did the hard work, and created two pitches and like the first 4 to 10 scripts of each idea and submitted it to them. They loved it. They're currently trying to sell those two to a vertical app in the UK. And then, long story short, they reached out to us about a month ago because they liked us and our samples. And they said, we have this project. We know you guys are not British, but we would love to hear a take. We pitched on the spot in the room. They liked the idea, wrote the first 4 episodes, turned it into them a day after, and they loved it. And we sold our first vertical. So that's kind of how our process was. It's a little bit of both, people coming after you and then you going after people.
Okay, that's interesting because it's been a little different for each of you in terms of how you've been able to kind of navigate this. And so what would you say? So like let's start sort of from what kinds of materials, did you have in terms of being able to connect, sort of cyber stock or to have people reach out to you directly? Like what would, if we were interested in that space, like what would we need to have, you think?
Just like any other process, like you need to have a sample ready to go
Okay.
for sure. Because that's what they're going to request. And then depending on the company, what we found was that because we also did the submittal to like Drama Box and other companies, what we found was that it depended on what they needed. So, like for instance, the UK company that we're working with, they wanted more of a breakdown of like characters, like a summary of the story. So much like they do like in live action, where it's when you're trying to submit a proposal for a series and all that, some of these companies they want to break down so they can get an idea of what the rest of the story is going to look like, aside from reading like the potential that your story can be from the first few episodes.
We wrote the first 4 episodes of one sample, and in our second sample, we wrote the first 10. And it's primarily because of the paywall. Most apps, vertical apps, work to where you watch 4 episodes and then the paywall comes. If you want to watch more, you have to subscribe. So they want to know whatever you're submitting will get those audiences past the paywall. Then they'll probably will like your script and want to pay you for the rest. So when you're creating samples, you could have an outlandish idea. You can write a breakdown like a summary, a log line, the comps, genre, episode count, break down characters. But unless they see your actual script, they don't know if you're actually writing a vertical. And that process is totally different. The breakdown of a script, usually it's very simple. It's a hook, twist, and cliffhanger. Those 3 things you have to hit in a page or a page and a half. So you need to show up with not only an idea of where your story can go, but also scripts that lead to the paywall. So that could be anywhere from 4 to 10 scripts when submitting, if you want to increase your odds of success.
Sarah and Becky, what do you think? What did you need to have?
Yeah, I would also say, I mean, I definitely agree having a sample is great. A lot of these companies too will ask you for a writing test and will even give you a prompt. So that's another thing to just be aware of. And so far, I've heard that some are paid. So far, Sarah and I have not been paid to do a test yet, and they're usually pretty short. The one that we did for our particular project was mostly because the band knew that we came from preschool television, and I don't think they ever saw our thriller feature or anything, so they wanted to make sure that we were aligned with them on tone and that they knew that we were aligned, like we were pitching and riffing ideas with them, but they wanted to make sure that we could execute it in in script and in the vertical format. So we did a writing test for them and they loved it, and that's what ultimately sold our vertical.
Okay. And so can you tell us a little bit about some of the companies that you've been working with sort of you guys have been working, it sounds like, on some of these more elevated verticals as opposed to like, I'm pregnant with the mafia triplets. Like
Such a great series.
full disclosure, I did
series.
actually audition as an actor for that.
Amazing.
That's
Oh.
wonderful.
That's why I came. I was like, yep, okay. That was as far as I could see it going. So can you tell us a little bit about these buyers? Like, who are they? I mean, I know you're not going to know everybody, but can you give us an idea of like sort of what sort of who they are and what makes them different?
I would say I think Becky said it too, like we have signed NDAs and it's not like we're trying to hide it. It's just we know that you can't always do a friend DA with everybody. You can't just tell people what your NDAs are. But I would argue that most, if not every Western vertical company are looking for ways to differentiate themselves from the Southeast or Eastern companies. And I would start, and what we did when we first started, we just did a Google search and we found a bunch of companies online. And I would say the ones in the UK are good to start going after because they are trying to get into a market where I think Drama Box makes like 300 verticals or 1,000. It's in the range of 300 to 1,000 verticals a year. So it's heavily saturated. So the UK or American Western verticals have this problem of an oversaturated marketplace. So how do they differentiate themselves? They obviously probably have more budgets, bigger budgets, but they're just trying to elevate the craft and go beyond just the rom-com, werewolf, vampire, um, mobster genres, which are great and amazing and they have their place, but definitely look to the UK. And I think Becky mentioned that Fox, Disney, Fox are dealing with companies as well.
And I know they're making new ones all the time. Like everyone's trying to get on this bandwagon. So you might get lucky and see it before someone else does. Because I know even ours was looking at going on a different app that hasn't even been released yet. So there's
Yeah, we don't even know the name of the app that we were originally going to be working with because they didn't have a name yet.
and they
now,
have different rules. So like
Yeah.
like Michael's saying, it's really about the app. Like that one would be only 35 episodes, which is short for a vertical. And it's like, so are they, I think they're really trying to figure out what this new thing can do and how many viewers and what kind of how it can go.
yeah. I know there's even, I don't know what app it is, but I met someone recently who's writing a sitcom vertical, and each tradition, like each hour or half hour is going to be basically a season. So she kept saying she's writing a pilot. And I'm like, well, what's a pilot? Is that a minute long or, and she said the pilot is basically the whole first season. It's like the first 30 minutes of a sitcom, and then they'll do multiple seasons of this new series. So everyone, just assume that everyone is making a vertical and, and pitch them your idea.
That's kind of great advice because yeah, everyone's sort of trying to get on this bandwagon. And
Yeah.
so are you guys finding that is it taking time to adjust to the writing? Because it is different, right? A traditional sitcom sounds like it's different in a vertical. And Michael, to your point, you also have these sort of points you have to hit before the paywall. So what's that been like for you guys in terms of like writing these types of this type of format?
It's an adjustment for sure. I'll speak for myself and of course, like Michael, we're used to writing a certain way because especially if you're writing for, let's just say for animation, it does require a lot more detail. Whereas in live action, there's a lot more negative space and probably a lot more dialogue, right? For the verticals, though, what we have found is that you have to, unfortunately, sometimes write on the nose. But if you're using your craft like for us personally, we felt there's a way to do it and still sound organic enough, make it entertaining enough. So you don't have to rely so much on exposition exactly. It's just to tell because there's a lot of VO in vertical, by the way.
Voiceover.
Yes, when it's earned, I think. But what we found was, we also wanted to put our take on it and elevate it as much as possible so that we didn't cringe at the end of the day. I mean, in a bad way, but we would just look at dialogue and find ways to, can we say this in a way that even though it may be obvious that they're actually giving information, let's make it entertaining enough.
I would just add one thing to what Jeanette said. And in most entertainment writing, it's show, don't tell. In verticals, it's the opposite. It's tell, don't show. And it's primarily because their budgets aren't as high. So you're not going to be showing anything that interesting, most likely. And then also it's vertical. So not 16:9, it's 9:16. And you can't fit a huge cast. You're going to have to pan. So it's really about the hook, the twist, the cliffhanger, get in, get out, get them to watch the next episode again and again and again. So yeah, it's totally different from what we're used to writing and trained ourselves to write and got paid to write. Um, but it's also made our writing better because we're still working in animation and we're still working on narrative podcast and other projects and developing for studios. It certainly makes our writing a lot snappier, but there is this, it's tricky because sometimes we're like, oh, let's just have a voiceover. Like, wait, hold up. This isn't a vertical. So, but there are benefits to it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say what Michael just said was the hardest adjustment for me, specifically just the tell don't show. Like we write visual mediums, right? Like a vertical is still technically a visual medium, but I especially, I think Sarah nailed it before I did, but I kept ending cliffhangers on like visual gags and like visual cliffhangers. And it wasn't working. Like you had to end on dialogue. And every once in a while, you could end on a big, like if it's like someone getting tased, that happens in art, like someone getting like like a big physical beat is okay, but for like visual small gags and stuff needed to be punched with a line of dialogue.
You were talking about how helpful you're thinking about writing hooks, twists, and cliffhangers, especially within a short amount of time on the page. Have you found the story engine needs to be stronger to make that happen?
I weirdly, and I could be wrong, and every vertical is a little different, but I almost want to say no. Like I don't think it necessarily has to be stronger because the fun thing about verticals is you can kind of make anything work, especially, and even, I mean, obviously, like we said, we're all working on more elevated verticals, so we want it to feel real and grounded. But Sarah and I, the one we're doing is also a little bit of a spoof kind of. So we got to have fun with some of those tropes. So like a tornado can come out of nowhere and you can kind of just really have fun and just make the impossible happen.
You guys got a budget, a
No,
tornado.
Oh no, it doesn't look like you would think.
no, again,
Okay.
think spoof. The tornado might be a leaf blower. Like, so,
Got you.
you get creative.
Yeah, I would also say too, like you need to mix. I think for the story engine, it's really just your top line premise. Is it werewolves, vampires, and creatures of the lagoon having like a party? And that's one idea. You guys can have that. That's going to require certain like cliffhangers and hooks. But I think in general, you need to mix up, is it a dialogue? Is it a question? Is it some loud sound off screen and the characters turn to it, cut to black? Is it some new plot device being revealed? Is it a turn in the story? You need to switch it up. It can't just always be a loud sound every cliffhanger or hook. Cut the scene right in the middle. You could do that, but it needs to be earned, and you got to switch it up. So your story engine is your log line. It's your premise. It's your North Star. Will your main character reach their goal and get past all these outstanding obstacles? That's what the 50 to 60 episodes are about. But can you keep them hooked? Each episode is another plate you have to spin, but you need to utilize every hook and twist you can come up with.
Compared to Spanish telenovelas,
Mm-mm.
as they switch scenes and all that, they tend to kind of leave you hanging every scene with like something's about to, and they're very dramatic. They're so dramatic, but it works for that culture, right? Uh, so I find that that's a good comparable to look at and kind of take like some pointers from it that you can use for even your own verticals of like how they actually end a scene and then
It's a
how they're
great point.
actually coming back to the scene, after they cut to another scene. So it almost has the same make.
Yeah, soap operas are very good. Like, go to the library and look something up. Go to watch soap operas. They're on every day. You can watch them on YouTube. And even though you probably grew up watching them with your parents or your grandparents, they are a well to go to pull out um, some really cool hooks and cliffhangers, like Jeanette said.
Oh, that's fine. I mean, I guess there's a reason why they've been around for so long, and we've been watching them since the 50s, right? I mean,
Yep.
there must be something there, and that's fascinating. So I think that's amazing. Tell me a little bit about now that you guys have had that successful pitch. Like, what's next? What you've gotten through. You've they've bought your vertical. Now what? What happens after that?
Feel like you have to continue to squeaky wheel it. I think that's success that, Michael and I have had. I know the Bergs too, of just being consistent. And especially during this time, we've known it already, like in animation, that things were slowing down. We've known it 2 years even before it started to slow down for live action. So we kind of saw the pattern already happening, and at the same time, just being on top of it. Like you can't, even if you land something major, we feel like you can't really relax. You have to continue to keep at it because the job's going to end at some point.
Mm.
Right. You kind of have to turn and burn. And I think you could look at verticals similarly to how Jeanette and I at least looked at animation when we first started. We didn't really come up in the studio system. We were just kind of getting scraps, a job here, an odd job there. But if you get like appalled by getting scraps, you want that big meal, you want that big job, you want to make all that money, you're going to be waiting in line for a while. But what we did is we collected a bunch of scraps and we made a stew, and then we froze that stew and we'd heat it up every time we needed to eat. And that's the same thing with verticals. You kind of have to leverage one, kind of like pardon my French, a hellscape of sinking stones. And you're jumping from one vertical to the next, looking to see your next 2 or 3 jobs. So once you do your research and find out all the companies, tell them that either you've sold your first vertical, it's got over 50 million views in the first month. I would love to write with you guys. What are you looking for? Just keeping on. Unless you have like a full-time position, like a Real Shorts, and you're making like $2,000 a week minus Uncle Sam, and you're just turning out scripts, you need to kind of build your own little empire, and it's all word of mouth, and it's a long game. It's chess, it's not checkers. But don't be afraid of your first project being sold for very little money. It's really a numbers game of bulk work than it is I sold one thing and now I can go buy, a little casita because it's verticals. It's not live action. But
Yeah,
yeah.
you're definitely not buying a casita with vertical money. I don't think.
Maybe the
I'd say an
door for the
island,
casita. Yeah.
But I think the best part about verticals is they make them so fast. So like ours just finished filming yesterday, right, Sarah?
Yes.
Yesterday.
Congrats.
So, and comes out in a few weeks. So the best thing is we're gonna have actual, evidence. Like we're gonna have a link to send to people and say, hey, you can check out our work now on top of our samples and whatnot. We're gonna have like a physical vertical of proof of concept, that has been made. And so I think that is also what's great is you're going to have a portfolio that you build up pretty quickly, and you're going to build up those credits faster than in any other medium, except for maybe content creation.
Well, and I also thought we got to go to set, which was awesome. And we got to meet the director who has done, I want to say, 100 of these. So like another person to talk to about like, oh, which company do you like working for? And the producer who wants to make more. So it's like more future jobs out there too, which was good.
Exactly. Yeah, and I don't think many writers are being invited to set. We fought for that. So I would highlight that too. If you want to go to set, talk to your people, whoever you're working with, and make that happen, because that is where a lot of the networking takes place.
Oh, that's interesting. Wow, just so different than, other mediums. It is incredible and fascinating. So, what would you say if you were to kind of go through this process again? What mistakes would you avoid this time around?
I think it would be more on Jeanette and my side of, I think initially, we were just learning, so it's kind of impossible, but to have more samples, I think, so
Mm.
that when that initial like pitch or meeting general, and they ask you, so what do you have or what are you working on? You can kind of throw at them more ideas. So I think we couldn't have been more prepared than what we could have been at the time and how the stars aligned. But if I could go back and rewrite it, I'd have some notes, and I would want Jeanette and I think, to come up with ideas. I think we come from animation, and we are always preparing and over preparing, and it's a visual medium. You have to know everything. So I think we were definitely set on our two ideas. Like, we knew everything about them, whereas we probably could have done better potentially if we would have just spent a quarter of the time on those two and produced like 7 or 8 more ideas just to have ready. And like Becky and Sarah said, the turnaround's really quick. They like your idea. They send you the contract. You fight for certain things. They give you very little. You say, okay. You write your scripts. Takes 2 to 4 weeks, one round of notes. Within a week or two, they're shooting it. 3, 4 weeks later, it's out. So it's a numbers game. It's bulk. So sit down and make yourself a development slate. It's a Google Doc, and just write out all the ideas you think you have, and be ready for that meeting, because it's usually the idea you think of less, like, this is not going to work, that they go for. Always happens.
Yeah, I think I agree with Mike. Like, I don't know that we could have done anything different. And like hindsight is always
2020.
yeah. So, I mean, I would say like we've learned quickly not to be precious about the writing and that it's going to play out differently because of what we're used to doing too, because of, sometimes with our other counterparts, like in the live action world and also in animation, there's a little bit of I would say, a bit more of a demand to write a certain way than there is in verticals. So I would definitely, if I could get that quicker, which I think we have, like granted, like 9 months, it hasn't been such a long time when I think about it. But yeah, probably would have been less precious about like, oh, it's got to be perfect, it's got to sound this way, and then realize, oh, that's not what they want.
There were a lot of people involved and a lot of moving parts, and I think, and a lot of miscommunication. And so my biggest, not like quite regret, but I wish that Sarah and I had asked early on, okay, what's the chain of command? Who do we send things to? Who's actually giving us notes? Like, there were so many, yeah, it was a too many cooks situation, which, we can't control that. But I think in hindsight, we would have tried to communicate better on our part to make, like, just ask more questions. Sometimes, you worry about being annoying or whatnot, but I think we needed to be annoying to find out who we were supposed to be communicating with.
Well, and I also think what was funny is the band hired us and they brought producers on after. So that's part of the miscommunication. And the producers were like, write whatever you want because it's going to be what we're going to make it huge. And then I think it was like, we should have known it's a vertical.
Yeah.
We can keep the character count down and make it a little bit more vertical appropriate. But I think it's also like you listen to what people say, but you have to put your vertical hat on and realize that like they're not going to get everything they want either, like they
Yeah.
can't get the moon and stars even, in live action these days. So I think that's something I would like to think about moving forward as well.
So basically, we were brought on by a different producer who the studio didn't end up working with, or the band that we didn't end up working with. But what we did right, what Sarah and I did right, was we knew our client. We knew who we were working for. And so the producer that brought us on actually was kind of starting to lead us in the wrong direction. But luckily, we still had our pitches ready that we knew. We were like, we know the band. We know this is what they want. This does not seem aligned with their tone. And if we had not had those other pitches in our back pocket, we would not have gotten that job. So I think Jeanette and Michael said this already, like, do your research, know your client, like, absolutely. And go with your gut. I think you have to trust yourself a little bit. Cause yeah, if we had fully trusted this other person, I don't think we would have gotten it.
It almost sounds to me like a lot of people are trying to figure things out. You know what I mean? Like it's the producers trying to figure it out. It's the apps, just launching
Yeah.
and trying to figure out, what their audiences are looking for. So you really have to kind of trust what you know, and work with that, because there are people around you who are also attempting to figure it out as well, because this medium is so new for everyone.
Yeah.
That's wow, that's fascinating. Just so really just different and interesting. Is there anything that you would want people to know?
It's fun. It's, at least to us, it's resulted to be very fun experience figuring it out. And at the end of the day, we're writers and we want to be able to tell stories in different mediums, no matter, like, and whatever the best medium is for it. So I know that, like, Michael and I, sometimes when we've, already done with a stressful week and we get to jump on writing for vertical and figuring like those nuances out, we have some of the most calming, fun, laughable, entertaining moments that we can think of, and we'll read it to each other out loud. It's just, like for this last one, we would pretend we were actually British, so we would actually try to say things like the British
We'd
do, and we
start in a
just
British accent, and it would go Scottish and
yeah, it was like
Australian and back
horrible.
to. But there's a freedom to the writing.
Yeah.
It's very, it can be very playful. That it's not precious. So it's not that it's not as good writing or it's not as valuable. It's just, you just need to say what it should be. And there's not 30 people coming in for the next 3 months, educational consultants, and this person and the producers, brothers, sons, friends, telling you what it should be. So there's a speed to it. So you kind of just have to go.
Yeah, it's very liberating.
It feels that way. Oh, that's amazing.
Most companies here in the US, and literally what all we did, there was no special sauce. We didn't sacrifice to any vertical god. We went on to Google and searched and started to reach out. That's how we got to our place in the UK. We, and the other job as well, they kind of reached out to us. What I will say too is to kind of hack that thing, because everyone's probably saying the same thing. Just go online and look, you'll find it. A lot of companies today are using verticals as commercials. So there's the first company we worked for that reached out to us. They have a learning app, and they're now trying to branch out and bring in more people to understand their product. So they paid us to create 4 pilots. Had nothing to do with the learning app itself. It just, they wanted sticky, entertaining verticals. So another attempt that you could make to find these companies would be to go to any studio or production company or company in general, maybe it's a learning app, and ask them, have you considered verticals? I'm a vertical writer. I'd love to pitch some ideas to you. The budget for these are very small compared to paying for a commercial on primetime television. They could create a bunch of different verticals. So I will say, obviously, Western vertical companies are usually better, trying to do more elevated work. And then you can also go after companies. The last thing I'll say, and obviously I talk a lot, I'm sorry, but I'm excited and I want to try to help you guys, is a lot of companies will say they want elevated, but in reality, they want success. So they're kind of juggling both. We want to be elevated. We don't want to just do werewolf, vampire, mobsters, but we also want the views. So sometimes when we say elevated, we mean you're not going to be able to escape the verticalisms that exist, but they will be open to not making it as, I think, as bad.
I think
It's just,
elevated
yeah.
to Michael's point is another way of saying they just want something different. They want to stand out from this other company. Like, how do you stand out from a drama box versus a Reels versus, I think there's another one called
Maple Studios, I
Maple
think.
Yeah.
Studios. Yeah. So it's like, how do you stand out from them? Um, and what we're also finding too is that you can see all these articles are coming out. Netflix, Issa Rae, I think Tay Diggs also.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're launching their own vertical.
Vertical.
So something to keep in mind is that as they try to look for elevated, that means that they're going to also try to get out of certain genres. We've mostly seen romance. There is, like, of course, the werewolf, what is it,
Mobster,
the
gangster.
CEO one.
Mhm.
There's the ones that are a little bit more like Michael and I know the Bergs would definitely never write. that it's like it questions the whole Me Too movement. So um,
Yes.
for us, it's just more of like looking for those opportunities and then also like keeping in mind that maybe you have a sample that the common companies are not looking for, but the other more elevated ones. And when I say elevated, we're talking about like rom-com. There's some that they're trying to do horror now. They might be looking for those. So I think it's good to keep I guess a repertoire of, like of samples that if you can turn that genre into a vertical, like why not go for it?
Also, elevated can mean like the film, like cameras that they're using. Our microdrama used like 5 different cameras and actually used film cameras. So on top of digital, so it's just kind of obviously everyone's going to be a little different, but I think the actual visual filming of it is also can be more elevated.
So we have some questions here.
Hi. I'm wondering if, because we had kind of a vertical boom a while back, like with Snapchat doing vertical and Quibi. I know Quibi wasn't all vertical, but I did write a vertical for Snapchat, and I'm curious how these are different.
Snapchat was mostly comedy, right? Is that?
Yes.
I would just say I think that's the biggest difference so far is a lot and the verticals are coming around and now I think now the more elevated ones have more comedy like the one Sarah and I did is kind of a comedy horror spoof on it. But I think the biggest difference is that most of these have been very dramatic. But that again is changing.
And I also think it was the time. I think COVID really messed up verticals. I think what happened is we all went back to work or, some like going out and we're all more addicted to our phones now. And when all that came out, we were all just sitting at home and could watch a full movie. I do think there's a tiny bit of that happening too.
They're recording anywhere from 60 seconds to 90 seconds, although some of them are starting to go into like the 3 to 5 minutes. And those are the ones that are a little bit more experimental right now. But you're talking about anywhere from an actual page to a half, or 2 pages
Yeah,
And that's per
ours.
episode, right? Yeah.
per episode. Yes.
Yeah.
No, you're right. It's a page to page and a half ish an episode, and we initially signed on for 45 episodes, and then we realized we could have ended it at 45, but we decided to like really lean in, and we had a lot of 1 page episodes too, so we ended up doing 56 episodes, and it was right around 100 pages total. And they usually call it the script, meaning you're not creating a separate file per script. You don't have 100 files. Your scripts just are like acts almost, but episode 1, episode 2, 3, 4, all the way to the end. So one big script, you're looking at about 100 pages, probably around the 56, 40 to 50 page or episode range.
You're essentially writing a feature and then you just highlight where each episode ends within it. So yeah, so if you've never seen a vertical script, it is a feature length. Ours ended up being shorter for budget reasons. Ours is only about 52 pages, about 50 episodes total. But it still looks like one full document, like Michael's saying. And then different studios we know do it a little differently. Ours, we would highlight each episode and then we would list the characters that were in each episode as well, just to help.
It's
And
fancy.
yeah, and our character count wise, our vertical probably has a way higher count than most because we had a band that's already 4 members that are the main characters on top of another main character and several side characters. So, but I would say most verticals I've watched are usually like 2 to 3 main characters.
Ours was
Sounds
large
right.
too. It wasn't about a band. Ours was, I'll just say, it was about influencers. So, you know, that required certain scenes where there were a lot of them, and then some scenes where it was just 2 people in a room, 3 people in a room. They did say that they could use AI to help. So we tried to avoid writing scenes that would require AI because we just know it's like the uncanny valley. It's probably going to look worse than what the studio believes it does.
Can you give a realistic range of what writers should expect to be paid for selling verticals? Is there a difference in pay between Western, Eastern, or UK companies?
I would say that I believe she did one of these talks too, Isabel Dreen. who's prominent in the vertical world, had mentioned, since she's written a lot, and it's true, it's a wild, wild west. You are really kind of at the mercy of your person hiring you. There's no unions. Um, so you could end up getting paid, hopefully, like $10,000 to write, 40 to 50 episodes. Most likely, especially if it's your first, it's going to be half that or less. And then it depends on who you're working with. Are you writing for the app itself, or are you writing for the production company that the app hired to produce the script? And or is the production company you're working for producing and funding their own project to then later out sell to apps? So there's just too many variables to know. But like I said at the beginning, it's a numbers game, meaning it's a low numbers game for payment. But the big number is you need to collect a lot of work, collect all those scraps,
Yeah.
make that vertical stew.
Because realistically, though, the first few gigs are going to be lower than you would expect. And it's not until like if you've been writing quite a long time and all that, that you would expect to be able to negotiate towards more like what Michael was saying, that 10K. Um, we're not there
Mhm.
yet. We're working
It
our
just
way.
depends on
So it's just like,
on your producers. Maybe they're
yeah.
a hit band and they've got a lot of money
Oh,
and
Yeah,
they're
we
good
we we
negotiators.
negotiated a little higher. We got lucky.
Yeah,
But it's still not crazy money. I will tell you that.
yeah.
Yeah, it feels like it's almost like you have to have that sort of volume to be able to make up what you would have done in a different genre. Does that
Yeah.
resonate with you?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also add that hopefully as more studios make more elevated content, the pay will go up. But also there's so much
Yeah.
competition that they might be able to keep the pay low. I don't know. Well, it's the Wild West, like Michael said. We're all still learning and waiting to see how it pans out.
Okay. And have you noticed a difference in pay between sort of like Western, Eastern, and UK, if you have that experience?
I would
We
assume
haven't
Western's
written.
higher, but we don't
Yeah.
know. Yeah.
Any suggestions for those of us who are pitching to distributors, brands, or networks who want to write, produce, and direct fully contained?
So is that question like you, the person, want to write, direct it all yourself, but you're also
I think
pitching companies to
it's
fund it?
suggesting that it's like a one-man band, meaning like you're writing, you're producing, you're directing, you're like the whole
Got it.
enchilada, as it
Got
were.
it.
There's a studio here in Burbank. The people that can do that usually have already a source of income. So that's why I'm like, it's kind of tricky. I don't know what would be the best advice other than, what typically people would say is like, yeah, call in favors, call in your friends. If you know somebody that has already worked in the vertical space, I have heard that it's good to at least have a producer, a knowledgeable producer, and a knowledgeable camera person that could actually help with that. Because everything else you could probably figure it out.
There's no
Yeah.
one right way to do it. And something Jeanette and I used to apply to ourselves is this phrase of little by little makes a bundle. So we started writing shorts, a lot of shorts. And then when the industry shifted in animation from only like 11 to 22-minute to 30-minute episodes, and now they're producing 7, 5, 3, 1-minute episodes, we were, in a great position because we had a lot of samples that were short. So maybe what you do is you call in those favors and you shoot the first 4 or 10 episodes to that paywall. And then instead of just walking in with a bunch of words and some images from online as a pitch, you say, sit down, watch this. And they watch your vertical and they're
Proof of
hooked.
concept.
Exactly. And then after the 10th episode, they're like, what happens next? You're like, you're going to have to pay me to find out, just like your subscribers have to pay past the paywall. So it's a great way, even if you don't sell that project could be the thing that gets you work other places. So instead of maybe sitting down and doing what most writers do, is just write words and try to hope people will read you. If you have the will and the ability, go out and shoot it and you'll stand out from like 99% of the people pitching. Um, so that's a great idea that you should just
Yeah.
pull the trigger.
Sounds like you're making it, and the question is like, now what do you do with it, right? Like where, and And if it's a proof of concept, I would say, yeah, just put it out there. This is kind of what Michael was just saying, but put it out there. The band that we made this for is self-funding and just going to put it on TikTok. It's not even going to go on an app. So you don't need, that's again, the other good thing about these verticals is there's no traditional route that you have to take. You can make it what you want. You can put some episodes on TikTok and then be like, look how much traction I've already gotten. Now pay me for the rest of it. Like that might be one option to go. Or just put the whole thing up so you have one proof of concept and then pitch and then have a bunch of other ideas in your back pocket to pitch and keep going.
Ethan, you're up next. You had a question.
I'm a director and a DP. I just did 2 verticals as a cinematographer. Looking at doing a couple more this coming month and potentially directing some in like June. When you guys did these, I've heard a lot of people are doing like 1, maybe 2 takes per setup. Is that consistent with what you guys have experienced?
Yeah, I would say a couple takes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very fast.
They had
Okay.
2 cameras, which made it faster, and
Gotcha.
but yes.
And then occasionally the director would just pick up another camera and run in and get another shot. So
Yeah.
I think sometimes there were 3 cameras and sometimes
Maybe 4.
4, sometimes 4
Okay,
and sometimes a phone because people
Yeah.
also were getting content like using their phone to film content that could also just be for social media and not directly from the vertical.
Are there any institutions kind of like where these companies are all meeting up in one place to receive pitches, kind of like an AFM for verticals? Does anything, or obviously it's going to be smaller than AFM, but like, does anything like that exist currently where
Not
we
that
could?
That I
aware
know
of.
of.
It sounds great though. Let's start it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure in a few years something like that will manifest.
I think
Sorry
there
to
is
interrupt. There's 2. There's a
Verticon.
vertical film market in Vegas and LA vertical market in May. There's a bunch.
See,
We're
we're all
going.
learning. We didn't know this.
Everyone's learning. Amazing. Can you give us an idea of what a writing sample should look like when reaching out to these vertical companies? I think you might have touched on it a little bit, but could you go into could you be a little bit more specific?
I would say, and Jeanette and Michael and Sarah, tell me if you disagree, but I don't think you need like a full feature length vertical. I think you could probably do 5 to 10 pages, like end at that paywall. And every app has a paywall a little differently, but it's anywhere usually from 5 to 10 pages. So I would have at least that, and then maybe it might also help to have like an outline of how you picture the rest of the vertical going so that if they had questions or if they wanted to buy your sample from you, you know where it's going.
100%. I think it's that concept of little by little makes a bundle. It's probably better to have 5 samples that go to the paywall than have just one vertical that's fully written all the way through, because you're putting all your eggs in that one idea. But if you have the time and the opportunity, try to write one all the way out too. Because some people won't buy it unless it's fully done because they won't be able to budget. They can't necessarily. Some people budget off of outlines. Others are like, we need to see everything. So now you're waiting another 2 or 3 or 4 weeks to finish it. They've already met other people. They've got a tight schedule and your opportunity is gone. So start small, do what Becky said, do like 5 to 10 episodes, rinse and repeat a few ideas, and then take the time to build a bigger concept. And then you'll be prepared for any eventuality.
Yeah, particularly the production companies are probably the ones that would want you to have something complete. And what I'm talking about, the production ones, is they're the ones that the apps will hire to actually film the verticals. So if
Yeah.
you're approached by a production company, then it's good to have a completed one. But for the most part, yeah, exactly what Becky and Michael are saying.
Would you suggest, like, if this is a new medium for you, would you suggest like doing one all the way through just so that you have that experience? Or do you think like you're kind of gonna get the hang of it if you do like 5 episodes to the paywall?
If I could start over, I would do the 5 episodes each, just to kind of like have a lot of ideas. Because I think if you get it within the first 5 to 10 episodes, you're really just doing the same thing for the next 40. It's just you need to have an arc and that story has to end. If it's a rom-com, then every episode has to have romance and comedy in it. They don't like if one episode's purely comedy and you lose the romance story. and vice versa. So I think it's, my humble opinion, smarter to have a few concepts figured out. You were dealing with different scenarios, different characters, then take on the huge Herculean task of not being paid to write a feature basically on your own.
Guys, thank you so much. I want to thank Black Magic Design for sponsoring Black Magic. I want to thank our guests. Thank you guys so much. It was so incredible listening to your stories.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having us.
everybody. Good luck.